that the sun shines down its power to all the world and makes the wind blow strong as it will. I wanna hope gentle rains can fall upon the land, so lovely earth can stay lovely still.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the 577th edition of Energy Week with George Harvey and Tom Fennell. Today is the 13th of June, 2024. Tom had tried to make it on, but we were unable to reach him, so he might still be asleep. He's having trouble with his sleep, and that's what the problem is. The material that we're using on this show is from my blog, geoharvey.com, geoharvey.com. You can go to the blog, click on the date of the article that I'm reading, because I'll tell you, the first ones start on the 6th of June. Or you can go to either of two links that are below, one of which gives you the ability to go to a website that has just a week's shows on the site for a single post. Each article that I'm talking about appears there. The other one basically is a text file with pictures that downloads that you can download to see exactly the same material. But those two have live links to the articles, as does geoharvey.com. So we're starting on Thursday, June 6th, and we are starting with an article from a publication called Electrek, E-L-E-C-T-R-E-K. The title is, "The U.S. is putting enough solar to power 70,000 homes on old nuclear weapons sites." The U.S. Department of Energy hopes to repurpose sites previously used in the nuclear weapons program into solar farms. The Department of Energy is negotiating leases with two developers for a total of 400 megawatts of solar farms within the 890 square mile Idaho National Laboratory site. And what you see there is a picture of, I believe that's the exact site. Now, obviously, at 890 square miles, this is what you're seeing is just a tiny portion of it. There are some buildings there. I have no idea what they were for. They may have been observing buildings for nuclear weapons tests that go back to the early 1950s or something. I don't know. But they're using this land, which basically has been taken out of use, to put solar panels on. And that's what that is. You know, before I go further, I want to mention something that has come up in the news about nuclear energy. I have not seen the total of this in the news, though I expect that I will in the next couple of days. I might even put it in the news myself. But basically, some time ago, and I'm talking about recently, a week ago, 2 weeks ago, since that time, there have been three things that have come up in the news. One of them is a question about the Bill Gates is behind a nuclear power station that has been proposed for Wyoming. And a question came up, which was, where is he going to get the fuel for this? Because the fuel is not available from any sources aside from those that are in Russia and China. And the federal government is not really encouraging people to get fuel from Russia or China. That was the first thing. Where are they going to get the fuel? The second one, which came up a few days ago, was again in regards to fuel, same type of reactor, which as I recall is a NuScale reactor, but I might be getting that wrong. but it is the Bill Gates reactor that is planned for Wyoming. The article, which was put up at my blog, says basically that scientists had looked at this fuel and determined that it could be used to build a nuclear bomb pretty easily. That they said easily. So that makes the whole use of it suspect, puts it into a different category. The third one was an article that came up, or a set of articles that came up in the last couple of days, saying that this the groundbreaking for the nuclear power plant has happened, which means that in theory construction on the plant is underway. Now, this morning, today being the 6th of June, I was reading the announcements that normally come up, that I normally look at every day at the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, and there was one announcement yesterday which said a meeting had been scheduled, which I think is probably a virtual meeting. You can get onto it online. But the meeting has been scheduled to get citizen feedback about whether that power plant should get a permit. And if I'm getting this right, the plant is under construction. Nobody knows where the fuel is going to come from, but if you get it, you can make a nuclear bomb out of it. And the Nuclear Regulatory Commission has still not given a permit. This is very dicey sounding. So I just thought I'd mention that since we've got a nuclear article here. Okay, I'm going to go on to the next article. Next we have an article from ABC News. I put this thing of a crystal ball up. I was looking for a hot day thing, and you know, we're always looking at what is ahead. And what's ahead in the crystal ball? It's kind of the picture that you see beyond, but upside down and backwards. The title of the article, this is from ABC News, that's Australian. I'm sorry, that's American Broadcast Company. Climate officials at World Environment Day announced 12 months of record high temperatures. Excuse me. The new climate warnings have been announced by the World Meteorological Organization, also called the WMO. One of them says the planet has experienced its warmest May ever, making it the 12th month in a row to set such a record, according to the WMO report. Now, what that means is that it was the 12th May, May was the warmest May ever. And the previous month, April, was the warmest April ever. And the previous month, March, was the warmest March ever. And now we've gone through a series of 12 months in which that month was the warmest ever of that month worldwide. So basically, looks like maybe we're in trouble. We will get more about the trouble as we go forward. Okay, the next article that I'm going to talk about comes from Clean Technica. And that article, here is a picture of a Volvo EX90 SOP. Well, you'll get it. The title is Volvo Cars Starts Production of Fully Electric EXP90 SUV in Charleston, South Carolina. So this may be a Volvo car, but it's an American Volvo car. Volvo Car Group said, "We are in a celebratory mood this week as our factory outside of Charleston, South Carolina has now started building our new electric flagship SUV, and the first customer deliveries are scheduled for the second half of this year." Now, obviously, June is, you're about halfway through the year. So second half of this year is just around the corner. And we will see how that all develops, but they are turning out the vehicles and making them ready to to deliver to customers. So we're up to Friday, June 7th. We have a picture of a seagull and a news item from ABC News, also American Broadcast Company. The title is Seabird Populations at Risk Amid Increased Hurricanes and Extreme Weather, according to a study. As the frequency and intensity of hurricanes increase, seabird species suffer, researchers warn. A study published in the journal Nature examines the aftermath for seabird populations after Cyclone Ilsa, which hit Bedout Island. I'm pronouncing that Bedout because it's Western Australia, and my guess is it's not French. This is in Western Australia, the Cyclone Ilsa, in 2023. So basically, we're looking at seabird populations. I could see this. You know, I was living in Massachusetts, very close to the coast, when actually on a peninsula that was surrounded by a tidal river, small peninsula. And when Hurricane Bob hit, and there was a period in the middle of our being buffeted by that hurricane when the noise of the storm just stopped. And I looked outside and the sky was blue, and I stepped outside, which is not what you're supposed to do, but you know, I did it. And I noticed that there were gulls in the air above me. And I think those gulls were trying to avoid the high winds of the hurricane and had just followed the eye of a hurricane. I don't know what else it could have been. And you know, I thought about how hard that must be. Gulls are able to do a lot. Seabirds of all kinds are able to do a lot. I used to walk by the ocean front in that area. Actually, it was Plymouth Bay. And I'd see gulls in the water, swimming around, birds swimming around, various kinds, in water that had slush in it because it was freezing. Salt water freezes at a lower temperature than fresh, and these birds were, you know, in water that was, they can take that. But high winds, they're not really designed for high winds. They can take rain, they can take snow, they can take all kinds of things, but winds are difficult for birds. So that's what that is about. And of course, these hurricanes are getting worse because of climate change. Okay. The next item on the list here is from Renew Economy. We have a picture of just a wind farm, sunset at a wind farm. The title is Almost 60% of Germany's public electricity supply came from renewables in early 2024. Nearly 60% of all electricity fed into the German grid in the first 3 months of 2024 came from renewable sources, data from the country's statistical office shows. Renewable power production grew to a first quarter share of 58.4%, and that is a record amount. So, you know, Germany has been pursuing renewable energy, and in the last few years, it has been really getting very adamant about pursuing renewable energy, largely because of the Russian invasion of Ukraine. Germany had already been after renewable energy, but the invasion of the Ukraine meant that they were dependent on natural gas and oil coming from Russia, and funny things were going on with pipelines from Russia. One of them was sabotaged, blown up. It was a subsea pipeline. They wanted to stop buying fossil fuels from Russia because they didn't want to be dependent on Russia, but also because, you know, they wanted to give Vladimir Putin a message, which was that they didn't want to do business with a person who was acting the way that he was acting toward the Ukrainians. So that is what that is all about. Okay, I'm going to go on to the next item here, and I'm having trouble with the mouse. The next item, we have a picture of the Viking wind farm. This is from Renews. The title is Viking Achieves First Power. First power has been produced at the 443 megawatt Viking wind farm on Shetland Island. Shetland Island is not very big. The milestone comes as Shetland gears up to be fully connected to the Great Britain electricity transmission grid for the first time. The 260-kilometer Shetland high voltage direct current subsea cable, that's a long set of words, project, it's a cable project, has been energized, is to be energized later this summer. So they've got this wind farm up in the expectation that Shetland, which is north of Scotland, and is the source of Shetland ponies, by the way, because the farmland there doesn't produce very much, and the Shetland ponies had to get by on a smaller amount of food. And by the way, there is also a Shetland cow, and it's like a Shetland pony in size, and they are milked. But they built this large wind farm on Shetland, and they built it in anticipation of connecting to the British power grid. We are up to Saturday, June 8th, and we have an item from Clean Technica with a picture of the offshore wind farm, an offshore wind farm. The title is New Steps to Advance Offshore Wind Progress in Maryland. The Department of Interior's Bureau of Ocean Energy Management, which is abbreviated BOEM, signed a memorandum of understanding with the state of Maryland to support the coordinated development of wind energy generation off the shore of Maryland, according to the U.S. Department of Interior. Now, this is the latest announcement that has to do with wind farms off the U.S. coast. The wind farm, there were a bunch of wind farms that were announced, I'm going to say a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, and then many of them were canceled because of a combination of inflation and other problems that came up. So the companies that had made agreements, in some cases paid many millions of dollars to get out of contracts. But when those contracts were got out of, they didn't go away. They were contracts that were put back to auction. So companies, including the company that had originally bid on it and won and then canceled it, the companies could bid on them again. And so all of these wind farms that went kind of out the window, so to speak, were brought back to life. And some of them are in fact being built now. Okay, we have another picture of a wind farm. This picture is from a site called mining.com. And the title is Clean Energy Investment Set to Run at Double Fossil Fuel Spending. Investment in clean energy technologies will climb to $2 trillion this year, almost double the amount spent on fossil fuels, according to the International Energy Agency. The $1 trillion that will go to coal, oil, and gas is far too much to conform with global climate goals. Now, excuse me, the United States is putting almost nothing into any fossil fuel, development of any fossil fuel. And we're seeing that in announcements of renewable energy. I think the Sunday campaign releases information about this every month. And I think that the last release that they said, which came out in the last few days, said that there was, I forget the percentage that went to fossil fuels, but it was tiny. It was like 99% of everything being built is renewable. So, you know, we're moving ahead on renewable energy in the United States. However, coal-burning power plants are still under construction in a number of places, including India and China. So there are problems that have to be addressed. And the United States is way behind other countries in building renewable energy, but China, which has got more than half of all renewable projects being built in terms of capacity in the world, is still building coal-burning power plants. So we're not there yet. Okay, we have an item from Clean Technica, and this is a picture of a Tesla Model 3. The title here is Estimating the Growth of Electric Vehicles and Tesla Sales, an exploration of S-curves. Some say EV growth has stalled, and by the way, it hasn't. Others acknowledge growth, but imagine that it is linear, when in fact it's exponential. Overzealous advocates, on the other hand, assume that exponential growth will last forever, which, of course, is also not true. Exponential growth can't last forever, because sooner or later you get to the point where you've got everything that you can use and you're not going to grow anymore. And when that happens, the growth is likely to stop pretty quickly. But this article, and you can go look at it, it is by going to geoharvey.com or clicking on one of those links down below. This is June 8th, and it's Clean Technica. Basically, the article looks at S-curves. An S-curve goes from, am I doing that right? I am. It goes up like this, and it looks exponential, but then it peters off like that. And a lot of things grow in that manner. Okay, we're up to Sunday, June 9th, and we have a picture of Agrivoltaics. Let me put this up. This picture, I've actually used this picture before, but it was some time ago. These are solar panels, obviously, and it happens that in this picture, tomatoes are growing under the solar panels. The title here is Agrivoltaic Solar Arrays Will Win the Rural Solar War with Insects. The war against solar power is erupting in rural areas across the United States, but evidence increasingly supports agrivoltaics as an effective way to benefit crops and preserve insect populations too. New York State has seen enough evidence to kickstart an agrivoltaic revolution. Now, there are things to say here, one of which is that you're going to hear from some people that the land under solar panels is going to be poisoned by arsenic compounds, cadmium arsenic compounds, and that would only be true if somebody did something bizarre. It's possible that there's no solar panels in Vermont that has cadmium and arsenic in them, because that combination is used in places where solar panels are going to have to withstand temperatures in excess of 100 degrees day after day. Those panels, as I understand it, cost less than the panels that we put up in Vermont, but they have other problems that make them impractical to use in a place like this. And a person would really need to have some reason to put them in, because they're not used. Now, I own some solar panels, and I looked into them to find out what kinds of things are in them. And what I found was that I could not find anything that was in them that was listed that was poisonous. to human beings. Things that are poisonous to, if you're going to consider all plants and animals, zinc, for example, is poisonous to snails and other animals of that type. Silver is poisonous to microbes of various kinds, bacteria in particular. That kind of thing is simply there. You know, we have to be conscious of everything that we put into nature. But the solar panels are pretty benign, and the materials that are in them are not just benign, they're actually sealed in glass. There can be lead used in the solder that is in the panels. That's not necessary, but it can happen, and you know, you'd have to look into that. But the other thing is, here we have tomatoes growing in the shade. Does that make any sense? Well, it turns out that it does. Fraunhofer Institute, which is a well-known research organization in Germany, did an investigation of tomatoes under solar panels. I don't think this picture is from that, but nevertheless, they did one. And what they found was that if you grow tomatoes under solar panels in partial shade, they can outproduce the tomatoes grown next to them in full sun by over 100%. So they're going to be getting 200%, twice the fruit that a tomato grown in full sun would get. There are a lot of plants that really prefer not to be in full sun, and there are a lot of candidates for use of solar panels in agrivoltaics, not the least of which is animals that can graze on grass under solar panels, because a lot of grass species, including cultivars that are used for grazing sheep, grow better in shade or partial shade than they do in full sun. So this is a way. Farming has always been difficult for farmers because they don't make huge amounts of money. It's a way of life they have to be dedicated to. And they're always trying to find a better way to make a living. And adding to solar panels to their farm can give them a way to make a living. Adding wind turbines can too. It can give them a way to make a little extra money, a lot of extra money, that does not reduce their farming output. So you have to be careful of what is said about that kind of thing. Okay, we have to go on. This picture coming up here is one that I found and used for an article from The Guardian. I didn't like the picture from The Guardian, and furthermore, it was of dubious ownership in terms of copyright, or maybe it was clearly copyrighted. This woman is a woman named Susan Solomon, and the title of this article, which is in The Guardian, is "Climate Scientist Susan Solomon, Let's not give up now. We're right on the cusp of success." Okay. MIT professor Susan Solomon is the author of 3 books, the latest of which is titled Solvable: How We Healed the Earth and How We Can Do It Again. This applies to lessons from the past environmental success. It applies those lessons to the climate crisis. Now, Susan Solomon was one of the, I want you to notice that you see Susan Solomon, this is a 20-year-old picture. And she's got a globe next to her that's in a kind of a weird position. You're looking directly at the South Pole. So the center of that, the white area, is Antarctica. You can see at the bottom is Australia. To the left and up from that is New Zealand. At the top of this globe, you can see the bottom tip of, southern tip of South America. Off to the right, you can see the southern bit of Africa. Susan Solomon was a scientist who identified what was going on with the hole in the ozone layer and what had to be done about it. And she was very successful at that. And I think that it's noteworthy, well, that she is now saying we should not give up hope. We've got ways to address the problems of climate change. And I happen to agree with her. I think we don't have time. That's one thing we're running out of. But we do have all of the technology that we need to slow it and stop it. So we've got a choice, basically. Are our grandchildren and our great-grandchildren going to curse us, or are they going to thank us? That's what it comes down to. Because if we let them down on this, we're going to be putting them into a world which is nowhere near as pleasant to live in as the one that we've got. If we address it, then the world is going to become a lot more pleasant than what it is, simply because without the pollution, we'll be able to live healthier lives. Well, without the pollution, we're going to be able to have more food and a wider variety of food. These are things that are just, they're basically given. But we have to do the work, the groundwork behind it. Okay, the next article is from MSN. And we have a picture here of a couple of people walking by a solar array that belongs to Nextracker. And this is a Nextracker image. The title is Renewable Energy Will Be Predominant Power Source for Data Centers, Nextracker CEO says. The surging needs of artificial intelligence. This is driving me a little bit nuts because do we need artificial intelligence? I think we do to some extent, but I don't think we need the amount that some people are talking about. Artificial intelligence and data centers will be primarily met with renewable energy and not fossil fuels, according to the CEO of Nextracker, a solar company. He cited the low cost and rapid development of solar power. Now, I want to point out the article is not just about fossil fuels, or the thrust of what he is saying doesn't apply to just fossil fuels. It applies to nuclear as well. Fossil fuels are not being built, as I said earlier in this show, not being built in the United States for a very simple reason. It's too expensive. They are too expensive. And they are really less expensive than nuclear. Do you want to pay 2.5 times as much for your electricity? Well, if you don't, then nuclear is kind of out of the question. The other thing is, can nuclear be used to address climate change? Well, it could if it were possible to put it up faster than they claim. But the problem with that is it almost never is less than twice as long to put it up as they estimate. If they estimate it'll take 7 years, it's best to think that it's going to take 14. If they say it's going to take $6 billion, it's best to think that it'll take 12 or 18 billion. And we cannot count on something like that to address climate change. And the same is true of small modular reactors, and I will refer anybody who wants to look into that to the stockholder presentation that NextEra Energy gave in June of 2022, which basically tells why NextEra, which is by some metrics the largest utility in the United States, has gone on the record as saying it's not going to be putting any money into nuclear or fossil fuels over the next 10 years, which means since that was 22, the next 8 years. But anyway, there is that. Now we're up to Monday, June 10th, and we have a picture of a solar power plant in Switzerland and another article from MSN. The title of this is Swiss Approved Law Boosting Renewable Energy Generation. Switzerland approved a law aimed at accelerating development of renewable energies as part of the country's bid to attain carbon neutrality by 2050. Official results showed that just under 69% of the Swiss voters backed the law on, quote, a secure electricity supply based on renewable energies, end quote. Now, I think I should just kind of cut back to the thing I just said about Next Era Energy. One of the things that they said about renewable energy, which is where they're putting 100% of their money, solar, wind, batteries. They introduced a term to me. They had actually used the term before, but I saw this as a new term in that stockholder presentation, which is near firm. And what they said is the term near firm solar or near firm wind means that the solar or wind has got enough battery backup to make it at least as reliable as nuclear energy for dispatching electricity during peak demand periods. So if you've got near firm solar and near firm wind running for you, and you also have a few other things like power from hydropower and things of that nature, geothermal possibly, you're actually talking about power that is probably more reliable than nuclear. And furthermore, because you never have to refuel the plant, nuclear plants get shut down for a month at a time sometimes less than a month, sometimes more, in order to get them refueled. And that happens typically every 18 months in the United States. Okay, I'm going to go on. Here we have another picture of agrivoltaics. And this is from Clean Technica. These are sheep in Hawaii under solar panels. And what the title here says, Agrivoltaics hitches a ride on the community solar train. The SunSmart Ames Community Solar Power Project in Ames, Iowa, is a good example of a community solar project that incorporates agrivoltaics for added benefits. SunSmart was commissioned in 2020. Since that time, it has started to employ 50 sheep to keep the grass down. So these sheep are basically grass cutters. I don't know that they get paid for that, but they are grass cutters. Okay, our next item, we have a picture of a wind farm in wind turbines in Ireland. And the publication here is the Irish Independent. The title is, Wind Farms Have Generated More Than a Third of Ireland's Electricity So Far This Year. Wind farms generated 35% of Ireland's electricity in the first 5 months of this year. The May Wind Energy Report from Wind Energy Ireland has highlighted how renewable energy had powered thousands of Irish homes and businesses. Not a surprise. The thing that is surprising about this is not that it happened, but that it happened as quickly as it did, because 35% is a respectable amount of the electricity. And just a few years ago, 4 or 5 years ago, Ireland was way behind the rest of Europe. They were looking at the possibility of having to pay a serious fine because they weren't putting in renewable energy quickly enough under the provisions of agreements that they had with the European Union. Okay, we're up to Tuesday, June 11th, and we have a picture of the Kuihilani Solar Plus Storage Facility in Hawaii. Maui Kuihilani Solar Plus Storage has begun generating electricity. That's the title. The publication is Maui Now. Let me put it up. That, as you can see, is not exactly a small solar project. AES Hawaii commenced operations at Hawaii's largest solar facility, Kuihilani, solar plus storage on Maui, a project generating enough power for 27,000 homes at 8 cents per kilowatt hour, the lowest renewable energy cost in the state, according to a company announcement. The lowest renewable energy source. I would think that 8 cents per kilowatt hour might be the lowest of any energy source. Electricity in Hawaii is very expensive. And so it's hardly a surprise that this is something to celebrate in Hawaii. Okay, we're up to, we have an article from Clean Technica. Let me put that up. These are not real people. Maybe you can tell. This is a probably computer-generated graphic from the National Renewable Energy Laboratories in showing the installation of secondary glazing. Secondary glazing, basically that means storm windows. The title of this article from Clean Technica is U.S. Department of Energy announces national definition of a zero emissions building. So they hadn't had a real definition of a zero emissions building before, and now they do. When I saw that, it struck me as a little bit surprising, not wildly surprising, but a little bit. The United States Department of Energy last week announced a national definition of a zero emissions building to advance public and private sector efforts to decarbonize the building sector, which is responsible for more than 1/3 of total United States greenhouse gas emissions. So the US DOE is making clear what its definition is. And if you're going to say that you're a zero emissions building, I guess that means you're going to have to be in accord with that definition. And that's probably a good thing. Okay, the next item that we have is a solar farm from Cypress Creek Renewables, big solar farm. This is from a publication called The Cool Down. I don't know when this publication went into existence, but I've only been seeing its articles for the last few months. The title is Massive Solar Farm with 80 megawatt hours of storage goes online in the Lone Star State. West of San Antonio, Texas, a 208 megawatt solar farm has come online. An article published in Electric says the facility has 80 megawatt hours of storage and can power 41,600 homes. The Zier solar facility is Cypress Creek Renewables' largest project to date. So that's big, I suppose. Texas has been going through the throes of electricity shortages in the last few years. And for example, they had that problem a couple of years ago in the winter when they had long blackouts. A lot of trouble was caused, hundreds of millions of dollars in damage. And the governor of Texas wanted to blame that on renewable energy, but it turned out that when it was investigated, it wasn't renewable energy's fault. It was a combination of things, one of which was that when the wind power plants were put up, they did it on the cheap and didn't winterize the wind turbines. So they could be shut down. But the wind turbines were not the fault. The real fault lay elsewhere. Of the 3 nuclear power plants in Texas, one of them had to stop functioning because of the cold. I know that sounds weird, but there are places that are not heated as well as every place else, and a water line froze. So that can shut down a nuclear power plant. Natural gas delivery systems closed because they iced internally because of water that happened to be water vapor that was in the natural gas. other plants closed for similar reasons. So now the state of Texas is putting in larger amounts of renewable energy, and the fact is that renewable energy is less likely to close down than other types. For example, they have wind turbines in very cold places. Solar arrays have been put up in Alaska, which, you know, when I was in college, we used to talk about solar power as something that might be useful in Arizona and New Mexico, but would it be useful in a place like New Jersey? Well, they're doing it in Alaska now. So, you know, this is all material that has to be considered. Okay, we're up to Wednesday, June 12th, and we have a picture of battery storage. This is a picture of an existing battery storage plant that belongs to Ørsted. You can see how big this is in a sense because there's a house in the background, or some kind of building in the background that looks like a house. But this is not a big plant. This is also not the plant we're going to be talking about. This is a really small plant compared to that. This article comes from Renews. The title is Ørsted Takes FID on Hornsea 3 BESS. Okay, what does that mean? Ørsted is taking a final investment decision on the Hornsea 3 battery electric storage system. Let me read the article, which actually says exactly that. Ørsted has taken a final investment decision on a 300 megawatt battery energy storage system to be installed on the same site as the onshore converter station for the Hornsea 3 offshore wind farm in Norfolk. Norfolk, of course, is part of England. The storage system has an energy capacity of 600 megawatt hours, so it can deliver 300 megawatts for 2 hours, or it could deliver 100 megawatts for 6 hours. You know, those are things that can be figured out. This particular battery storage system that they're going to be using or building is going to use Tesla batteries. And Hornsea 3 offshore wind farm is pretty big. So that's why they're putting on this really big battery electric storage system. 600 megawatt hours will power a bunch of houses for a bunch of hours. So this is not trivial. And it is much bigger than what you see in that picture. Okay. The next picture we've got is a picture of a, oh, there we go. It's a picture of a tiger mosquito. And this is from BBC. The title of the article is Tiger Mosquitoes Behind Dengue Fever Rise in Europe. An invasive species of mosquito has been found in 13 European Union countries, with experts linking their discovery to a rise in dengue fever in Europe. I'd never heard of dengue fever in Europe before. I'd heard of it existing in Vietnam, in I think Okinawa during the Second World War, various places, but this is not something that had been found in Europe before. Climate change is creating favorable conditions for the tiger mosquito to spread, and this is according to the European Center for Disease Prevention and Control. Now, we have, this is not the only one that will spread, and my guess is it'll spread into the United States too, eventually. But it's just one of a bunch of diseases that will spread from one part of the world to another. And I don't like mosquitoes. I'm gonna go on to the next article. But oh yeah, we have a good picture in the next article. we have to understand that climate change is going to spread tropical diseases farther north and south. It could resurrect some diseases. For example, there have been people who have got anthrax in Siberia because old anthrax pathogens have been brought to light by climate change, melting ice and things like that. And that's a pattern that is probably going to continue. Okay, our last item, whoops, too far. There we go. Our last item has, we have a picture of the Vermont State House, and this particular picture came from Wikimedia Commons. The article that we have here is from Vermont Business Machine. That sounds like a magazine. I misread it. This is a publication called Vermont Business Magazine, Vermont Business Machine. What a way to do things. Okay, it sounds like the local subsidiary of International Business Machines, IBM. But it isn't. It's not machine, it's magazine. Key bills head for veto override next Monday. Now, as I'm reading this on Thursday, it is in fact next Monday. But if you're watching this on some day after, you know, what is Monday? 14th, 15th, 16th, 17th? I'm going to look it up. Yeah. If you're looking at this after the 16th, you may be looking at it on Monday, in which it's the day that you're looking, or it could be that it's already happened. The Vermont legislature will reconvene next week on June 17th to vote on whether or not to override the governor's vetoes of two important environmental bills and possibly a third bill. Each will require a 2/3 majority of votes in support of the bill to be enacted. Now, basically in Vermont, we have a governor who happens to be a Republican, and we have legislatures that are strongly, they're dominated by Democrats. And I don't think Governor Scott really knows what he's doing when it comes to climate change and energy. And I mean that quite seriously. I don't think that he really gets it, and I don't think that he's really paying attention to the news that's out there. But, you know, maybe he's got his reasons. Anyway, the legislature passed a couple of climate bills, and he has vetoed them. Some things can be passed on to become laws without a veto, without the governor signing them. But when he vetoes a bill, it has to have a veto override, which implies a vote. The expectation is that these bills will in fact be made into law by the legislature in a veto override. We will know that they have been after they are, if they are. But the expectation is that this legislature will produce a veto override. So we'll see how that happens. But you know, that's life. That's what happens. At least in Vermont, we have a more polite, I should say. Calling it polite might be exaggerating. We have a more polite interaction between political parties going on than we have that we see in Washington, D.C. And what I see in Washington, frankly, distresses me. I hope we can get out of that. But anyway, there we are. Now we have our last slide, and that is a slide that wishes you to have a curiously pleasant week. And I hope that is exactly what you do. Now, I'm waving goodbye to you. I'm going to say, y'all come back next time you hear. I didn't get that right. If Tom were here, he would get it right. I'm sorry that Tom isn't even on the phone, but as I said, in the last few months, his sleeping schedule has been severely, I don't know, it hasn't been working properly. So he can't wave goodbye, but his cat probably is waving goodbye because his cat has his own habits. So I hope you do well this week. I hope you have a curiously pleasant week. And I hope you do come back next time. Goodbye.